Hey everybody, and Tony here with a review of Jules et Jim, known in English as Jules and Jim, which was released on January 23, 1962, and which I saw at the Kino Babylon. This film was directed, written, and produced by François Truffaut. It was co-written by Marcel Berber. It was co-produced by Jean Gros. The cinematography was done by Roy Coutard. The music was composed by Georges Delerue. It was based on the novel written by Henri Pierre Rocher of the same name. It was edited by Claudine Boucher. The narrator was Michel Subois, and it starred the talents of Oscar Werner, Henri Serre, Jeanne Moreau, Serge Rezvani, Marie Dubois, Vanna Urbino, and Sabine Opdin. Now, I basically went into this film with no expectations whatsoever, considering that this was my first time watching Jules et Jim. From what I can gather from this particular film, this was one of the most popular films during the French New Wave era, especially when you had such talents such as Oscar Werner, Henri Serre, and Jeanne Moreau, who led the helm in terms of the cast. And as I watched the film, I could not help but feel so immersed with what the story had to offer, and in terms of how much the characters seem to bear a lot of interest every time I watch them on screen. Story-wise, this tells the tale of two best friends who are artists and who lead the Bohemian life. And they are Jules, an Austrian writer, and Jim, who is a French translator and who's also a writer and someone who dabbles in the world of the arts. So both of them have this very tight friendship while also looking into women to see who suits their fancy. That is until one fateful slideshow that they managed to catch an image of a goddess's statue that they also meet a young woman by the name of Catherine. Catherine basically takes a liking to both men, and Jules also takes a liking to her, and therefore Jules and Catherine ended up being married after both Jules and Jim served in the army. And after all that, Jules and Catherine end up having a daughter, while Jim still has feelings for Gilberte. The question is, how long will their relationship last with each other, and how strong can their friendship be when all is said and done, and especially when the chips are down? What I managed to get from this film is a combination of nice witty humor, some moments of drama, and a climax and an ending that almost came so surprisingly. This film essentially surprised me in more ways than one, especially considering that the first act starts out all light and cheery, but then it gets a little bit darker in the much later acts while still maintaining a little bit of that witty humor. And then in the end, it kind of goes all south from there, especially where the two other main characters are concerned. I dare not spoil it, but as I stated before, it is quite surprising of where it came from. It was almost unexpected, and I was immediately gobsmacked by everything that happened. So overall, the story was quite well woven in terms of it being a character-driven story, and in terms of how it managed to build itself up quite nicely, especially in an unexpected way for the climax and that real shock and tearjerker of an ending. The cinematography is absolutely well done, as it managed to use not only real-time shooting, but also footages from the war between France and Austria and Germany, and a lot of historical backgrounds in each of them. They managed to keep me on the edge of my seat, especially considering the fact that there are some times that there are pauses being used in each shot, especially that of how Catherine expresses herself. And I was definitely mesmerized by everything the cinematography had to offer. It is a visually magnificent experience, and with a combination of real-time shooting and with the footages being found in the wars between France, Austria, and Germany, and even some still shots to be found of some artifacts, I was quite mesmerized and impressed by how much hard work and dedication went on in this particular project. The music is absolutely brilliant, especially when you have such a great mind such as Georges Delerue, who is on the helm to ensure that each and every piece suits the mood really well. Sometimes the music can be soft and lilting and sweet, and there are times that it can sound dramatic, and there are other times it can sound giddy and very jovial, thus showing a great gamut of emotions, whether it be a lilting melody or a jive number that can be heard. Everything about the music just screams excitement. And special kudos also has to go to Jeanne Moreau, who sang this particular song about their turbulent relationship, as in Catherine's relationship with Jim and her husband Jules, which is called Le Tourbillon. And I thought that song was just absolutely lovely to listen to, all thanks to Jeanne Moreau's smoky and youthful voice, and the guitar accompaniment accomplished by Serge Rasvini as Albert. Before I get to the characters, I would like to mention that this film has a narrator, and what I do love about the narrator is that he was able to have this dry, informative tone as to what is going on in the story. He basically functions as someone who is hosting a docudrama without being too pedantic nor too boring. He keeps everything exciting, and he keeps us, the viewers, glued to what is going on. It also keeps our interests ignited. Sure, having a narrator does kind of break the rule of show and don't tell, but I could totally forgive all that, as the narrator does have a rather interesting purpose with the entirety of the story. Sometimes he's there to not give too many details, while also giving a sufficient amount of details as to what is going on between the three main characters and even some of the supporting characters in the film. And now we get to the characters, starting off with Jules. Now, Jules is essentially a shy Austrian writer who is quite introspective, loyal, and a very loving friend to Jim. He's also very loving towards Catherine and is quite aware of just how eccentric she is as a woman, yet he still loves her body and soul and still cares for her even after they ended up having a daughter in the form of Sabine. Jules is definitely quite a warm-hearted character in his own special way, because he does exhibit a lot of positive traits, like being loyal to his friends and being there for them through thick and thin. Jim is basically a lot more extroverted than Jules, and he definitely has a sort of charisma about him that makes him quite likable to watch on screen. He's just someone that is also very loyal to his friend and even to the object of his affection, and he's just that someone who just seems to love life and is also rather loyal to the person he likes, and that is Gilberte. But by far, the one character that steals both Jules and Jim's thunder really has to be Catherine. Now, what I notice about this particular character is that she has a very vivacious, outgoing, and really rambunctious personality, even bordering on eccentric. And she was defined by those traits from the very beginning of the film. However, as the later part of the film progresses, we get to see that the eccentricity kind of ends up taking control of her to the point where she becomes not her vivacious self anymore, and that said eccentricity turns into something that basically manifests her being in the most negative way. But she's still nonetheless a very fascinating and very involving character to watch because of how much vivacity eccentricity and this type of thirst for life that she has. Sure, there are times that her whole way of doing things, such as seeing other men even though she knows that she is married with a child, it may seem like she's just kind of trolling her own duties as a wife. But if you overlook that aspect of her, you kind of realize that she has the sort of way of living and that she would like to be whoever she wants to be with. She's basically the breakthrough character in my eyes, and there's a huge reason why. She has a very strong and very outgoing and eccentric personality, and that's what makes her stand out from the main trio. Albert is essentially a dashing and very kind-hearted musician. Not much to say about him, but he does seem to have feelings for Catherine, even though she doesn't end up reciprocating him, and basically favors Jim over Albert. Thérèse is another character that steals the show, all thanks to her energetic personality and her totally out there attitude. By the time she sees Jim once more, she even goes out of her way to rapidly talk about her many affairs with different men in a way that makes her flighty and all the more rambunctious as a person. She's also someone who steals the show because of how much vivacity, personality, and guts she has as a person. Gilberte is essentially the more reserved and calm and peace-loving of the female protagonists. She is someone who shows love to Jim, and she's someone who is nonetheless really loyal to him and is the complete opposite to Catherine's eccentricity and Thérèse's outgoing, bubbly personality. Her personality is a lot more reserved and shows a lot of mercy and compassion. Sabina may be the tag-along kid in this film, but she does have her moments where she can be quite fun to watch, mostly because of her many conversations between her mother, her father, and Jim, and even Albert. So overall, the characters are quite interesting to witness, especially what goes on between Jules, Catherine, and Jim. Their friendship with each other starts off rather well, and then it leads up to a three-way relationship between the married relationship between Jules and Catherine, and the affair that Catherine has with Jim. And let's not forget about Jules and Jim's very firm friendship, which they managed to keep it together all the way to the end. And as I stated before, I'm not going to spoil what happened to either of them because you will have to watch it for yourself. You will definitely end up being surprised and even jump out of your seat by the time you watch it. The acting is just absolutely phenomenal. Oscar Werner does well with Jules in terms of making him quite the shy and passionate writer. It also helps that he is very bilingual, being able to speak not only his native German, but French really fluently. He was able to convey a lot of passion to Jules in a way that makes him all the more charismatic and quite magnetic in his own special way. Henri Serre as Jim managed to make a great use of his Mediterranean looks to make this character come to life. He was able to make Jim quite interesting and quite the gentleman in his own special way, and I absolutely enjoyed the way he was able to portray this character. By far, the main actress who stole the main actor's thunder was none other than Jeanne Moreau as Catherine. She was able to embody her with a lot of vivacity, eccentricity, energy, and a lot of life and personality that I was quite hooked with her performance. She sold it as Catherine that I was practically having my eyes glued to her because she managed to steal the show from her two male co-stars. Serge Rezvani does a very fine job embodying Albert's boy-next-door nature, And he does so in a way that makes him quite alluring as an actor, and also one that makes him quite enjoyable in terms of the way he was able to move around the set and embody this character with everything he's got. Marie Dubois managed to put in a lot of impetuousness and sass as Therese, as she was able to be a lot of fun to watch. It's all thanks to her hypnotically gorgeous and girlish physique that she was able to make Therese a wonderfully bubbly character, and one that I could keep coming back to every single time. Vanna Urbino brought in a lot of feminine grace and charm to Gilberte, and it's all thanks to her dark hair and her sleek physique that she was able to make Gilberte a very loving and warm-hearted young woman. Sabine Opdin was absolutely charming as Sabine, as she was able to make a great use of her screen time to fill the movie with a little bit of lightness in this otherwise mad whirlwind of a tale between two friends and the object of their affection. So overall, Jules et Jim was definitely a rather fun ride. It managed to balance some witty humor with some romantic drama and even have such a dramatic ending that I was quite hooked from beginning to end. And the one character that definitely stole the show for me was none other than Catherine, played by Jeanne Moreau. And you know what I'm going to give this film. A well-deserved rating of 4.5 out of 5 stars. Sure, some of the characters were not all that deep, but they were still rather entertaining and interesting in their own special ways, and you really have to hand it to the actors who portrayed them. And I also have to give a lot of kudos to Georges Delerue for such a fine and handsome score, and even François Truffaut, who made sure that the direction of his film was the way he wanted it to be, and he just made sure that it was well executed. And for those of you who watched Jules et Jim, whether it be at the Kino Babylon or your local cinema, what'd you think of it? Did you really love the story of this film? Was there a favorite scene that you enjoyed the most? Or did you feel like there was something that was kind of wrong with the story? Or did you even feel like the narrator wasn't even necessary to begin with? Comment below and let me know. And before I wrap up, I'd also have to give a lot of credit to Michel Subois for doing such a fine job with delivering his lines as the narrator with a fair amount of dryness and also a lot of charm and this overall strong vocal presence that he has. I was definitely mesmerized by his vocal performance as the narrator. Well, that's all for now. Be sure to tune in for another review. So until then, good night, everybody.